So the reason why I think this is interesting is because, like I mentioned before, there is a roundness that can be appreciated from this, from the front, but then there is also roundness that can be appreciated in the top. And sometimes, we have seen that there could be also, if I do things like this, then this becomes appreciable. Okay, that from the side. So I've tried to build a simple form that contains these features, and I show you how to build this properly in perspective, and then I will introduce simple surface that replaces the fillet, which we have seen it's something that makes a form interesting. So very simple exercise, but so I put the camera here. I'm not going to necessarily copy a camera, but I would like to try to follow that sort of form. So in general, remember, line drawing is the most important part. Don't go crazy with the rendering because the lines should contain all the information already. Also, in this sketch, the object is sketched like this. So 2 vanishing points sketched, vanishing points outside the page. But I'm going to change, so going back to who asked before, do you think it's a good idea to trace the feature? No, I don't think it's a great idea. It's preferable to copy it, and usually to copy it from a different perspective, which is exactly what I'm going to do. So I change my perspective, and I start from a couple of groups of vanishing lines. So when the first one is here, it goes outside the page. The second is here, outside the page. Remember that for product design, like we mentioned that earlier, it's always good to keep the vanishing points outside the page because products are small, and usually we look at products from the top because our eyes, our body is way bigger than the things that we usually deal with. Think of a camera. Most of the time, we look at the camera from at least a couple of feet higher. Great. And now I'm just going to sketch a vertical box here. And now I keep it very loose. I'm not going to put any detail. I'm just going to it's a draft just to understand a little bit of the form. And then I am going to actually I'm going to change this angle here. So my form now changes. I will have a part coming out like this. And then at the top is going to be like this, rotated like this. The side is going to introduce something like this, and there will be a component. This is going to be detached. So section here will do this. It will go underneath, keep going like this, and then I will have a second layer rolling down towards the viewer. This is going to rotate like this, so I can rotate this as well. And maybe here I can introduce a tilted plane like we saw before. So there will be a change of radius here like this, and this is also going to come out like this. So fill it here as well. That's basically the form that I'm going to try to build. It's always a good idea in your sketches, take the line. Remember, if I double the layer, so click and drag the layer on top of new layer, double the line so it gets more visible. So before doing the rendering, it's always a great idea to double the layer. Now it's not ready to be rendered. It's just for me to understand it. So I go back. It's always a good idea to do edit, transform, flip horizontal, because this helps to check for the perspective, check if the line work is looking nice or wrong. And sometimes I can fix it when it is flipped. So I'll keep working on it. Same layer, I call it lines. I am going to just press a little harder, and I use a lot of baby powder in my tablet. It helps the end to roll, to move better. Great. Now, question: how do you sketch properly these arches here? So those arches are, this is basically a horizontal cylinder. So if you guys remember from the drawing class, we sketch a cylinder with an axis. We sketch a 90-degree line here. And now I'm going to place one nice ellipse here, and another one here that is going to be a little smaller and a little wider. How wide do you do the ellipses? Well, it depends how round you want it. If I wanted something way smaller, I would have done a way smaller ellipse. So that's why I did the draft first. And now I'm just fixing the draft, asking the help of my horizontal cylinders. I'm also identifying exactly where that surface starts and ends, which is this. Now, vertical lines, easy. I click Shift, but no, I can also avoid to click Shift. Apparently, I was using also a third vanishing point a little bit, so I avoided to click Shift. Now, same problem. It rounds like this, so it means that it comes, it's going to go like this, basically. That's the idea on the draft. So I have to sketch it properly. Again, axis, 90-degree line, and now I'm going to put a nice ellipse here. I think it's okay. Now another one here. They belong to the same cylinder. So now that I have it, I can just, I see that probably the surface ends here, most likely, and it starts probably here. So in perspective, I keep pushing that line. I think so something like this, probably like this, yeah.
I see that you're using the cylinders in order to build the form and understand it better, but would you recommend leaving it in for when we're submitting it so that you see that we are also understanding the forms, or would you say to take those out?
I would love it. I would love it. I think it's good to have them. no, they don't have to be super accurate, but I think it's good that you show that beside getting the idea, you try to figure it out where that surface comes from. So yes,
Okay.
it's encouraged. Let's check this out. What happens here? A draft would tell me something like this. I think it's okay, but a vertical cylinder is going probably to help me more to do a better work on this. And in perspective, vertical 90 degree. So probably here I am going to fix it. Now keep going like this. I think we have it. Now vertical lines here. Now it rolls like this. Where is it this coming from? Axis, in perspective, 90 degree, ellipse. It doesn't have to be, of course, super accurate. It's a sketch, so it's now this is probably a little bit more complex. There is something that rolls towards the center. It needs a vertical cylinder, axis 90 degree, 90 degree, a little wider the ellipse underneath. Pretty much something like that. And when it rolls, it should also, so it's something like this, but then it goes down, so I have to change the angle like this. So basically the fillet is this. I can sketch a line here, and here in perspective something like this would work. And now it's time to work on this. This is a tilted plane though, so a perpendicular line here is not vertical anymore, but it gets a little tilted. 90 degree line, nice circle. Axis, 90 degree line, circle, ellipse. And now I'm going to connect them like this. I am going to complete it. This form does this. And now I decide that I introduce a little change in the form like that. I follow, give it some, it's like an offset basically. Surface, surface. You know what? I'm going to change it like this. Yeah, I think it makes more sense. So axis, 90 degree line, look for the correct proportion. Axis, 90 degree line, correct proportion. So it would probably do something like this. Okay. Now we rotate like this, keep going in perspective. What happens here? Vertical, 90 degree line, nice ellipse. I follow it and I fix it. I think we have it. It's time to give some offset to this line as well. And if you forgot how to do these things, you know, doesn't have necessarily to be built like this, but it should be built like this. If you want to simplify, I mean, you can. Vertical line, vertical line. Now, what was going on here? Well, this is like, I imagine this to be a different component. We have seen that most of the time when there is something very long, something very short, it looks modern. And so I keep doing that, even though it looks like it has to be a little thicker, otherwise it doesn't match this line properly. Okay, great. Now it's time to keep going like that. Here, axis, 90-degree line. Not there yet. Now it's working. Now ellipse. Same axis, same 90. Oh, well, it's here. I don't really need to see it, but there would be another big ellipse here. So basically, I want to communicate that there is roundness here. The tangent ends here. The surface starts here, so it should be like this. And it would do something like this, but then it gets completely hidden and probably would roll up as well. Yeah, that's it. Now I have to understand what should I do here. This continues, and I would just, I just let it go straight like that. I keep it clean and simple. Okay. I am going to also get something out of the form. So like, for example, let's pretend this is a camera. I'm going to sketch like a cylinder coming out, and maybe I'm going to round it like we have seen Apple does. But that's so I'm going to use an axis for this. I'm going to make it a little smaller because we have been noticing, excuse me, I do it again. We've been noticing that the proportion, so the width in the top view is the same as the width in the front view. I mean, I have decided I could do it differently. Now, I'm going to put a nice offset of the same circle, moving it out like this. And now on top of this, another ellipse like this. I'm going to round it, connect them. I design the inner part. And now I introduce a little cone. So section is supposed to do this. I think I'm done with the form. You can, I've put many rounded parts, but you can, do it simplified. But that's the goal, is just to understand why these forms seem easy, but in the reality, most of the time they are not as easy as they seem. we can eventually, I can add something that comes out here, or maybe from the back. No, here on top. So another cylinder here, move up 90 degree, and on top I'm just going to add a rounded form like this. So this is the half a part of the sphere rounded. Where is the horizon line in this sketch? It's probably right here on top, almost maybe outside the page. Great. What's the best way to do a quick rendering on a sketch? Well, now I have my lines drawing like this. I can double the layer. It's going to look like this. But I leave it, I think this is okay. I can move it, Control T, I move it up and down. Now, usually for product design, you can render it with light from the top. So all the parts looking at the light source will be rendered with the lighter values. How do you know if a surface is looking at up, down? You basically have to sketch perpendicular lines to those surfaces. So in a fillet like this, if I sketch a perpendicular line, it clearly looks like that. A perpendicular line to something like this looks here. A perpendicular line to this looks here. If the light is here, I have to keep that in mind. So this is not looking at the light source, so it cannot be as light. I have to use darker values. This is just doing a little bit of rehearsal on how do we do these things. Great. The first thing that I'm going to do is to sketch on the ground something that almost looks like a good outline of the shadow. I'm imagining the light to be on top, so I'm trying to, I have a rectangle here. I have something like this, and I have something like this connected vertically. The shadow, if I try to simplify, is probably the projection of the rectangle. So it will be this, the projection of this connected, the projection of this next to it. So that's the shadow, kind of. We don't care for it to look absolutely precise, but kind of. So rounded rectangle here. There we go. Now next to it, something like that, it comes out. The shadow also shares the same vanishing point as with the object. Doesn't have to be, tremendously great. I think so. This is the shadow. I'm just gonna put some dotted line, parallel lines like this, so I help my eyes to read it. Okay, this is my sketch. Now it's time to render everything. I'm going to use the paths. So pen tool, and a sketch in the combine shapes mode. I don't mind you doing the sketches on paper with the markers and scan them in and put it in the final presentation. That works. But if you do, scan them and make it clean and presentable. So I would like. I mean, I love real drawings on paper. Just try to present them as good as possible. So I just sketched a couple of paths in the combine shapes mode, clicking and dragging, following the form. Now I transform what I did in selection, go to layers. I'm going to use this layer, I'm going to call it rendering. Rendering. What color am I going to use? I'm going to use black. So I'm going to pick my airbrush, making it very big. Alt click so I check how big is it going to be. I'm going to go on top. I'm going to do this. But usually before doing this, it's always good to do select, modify, feather. I'm going to put 3 pixels. Give a little bit of feather, makes the shadow a little bit more soft on the outline. And I keep it darker here because it's closer to the viewer. Okay, great. So I've done the shadow. Now I can make a new layer. I call it rendering 2. And I'm going to keep with the same approach, new path, pen to combine shapes mode. I'm going to work on this area here. Great. I go down like this. I'm going to use grayscale, so I keep it. I don't have to use colors. So activate this form. Light is coming from the top. I'm going to put some grayscale. So alt click. No, take the brush, airbrush again. What color? Well, a gray works, so I can go to the palette here, take a gray 50%. I can use a different brush, like the one next to the airbrush. Alt click. And if I need something darker, I can just go to the foreground color, move down. Remember, cylindrical forms are rendered following the axis. And I can making it darker. There is a quick trick to, instead of going every time to look for the color, just alt click on the color that you like. It's a good way to build a form. A little bit of reflective light at the end, done with the airbrush. So it looks more three-dimensional, just a little bit. Am I going to work on the top? I don't need really, it's already light. Well, eventually I can add a little bit of gray, but not too much. So it looks like this. Now it's time to work on the front part. So I'm going to actually, yes, on the front part. So new path, combine shapes mode. I'm clicking and dragging on this surface. So this is going to be the thickness of the object, and it goes all the way through. Okay, great, like this. I'm going to roll up this. So I'm following the line work. So this stops here. I am going to do what? Now I transform it into a path. How? Clicking this little button, layers, brush. I'm using a different gray, like a darker gray, so they look to different components. So darker gray, just go down. I'm going to make a very big airbrush. Check how big is it, and I'm just going to press a couple of times on top. But now I have to keep in mind, okay, which part of this dark gray is facing the light source? The side here doesn't, so here I can make it darker. Vertical strokes, because it's a vertical cylinder, I left some light gray here. I can alt-click and add a couple of strokes. It's easier to be a red. And this part, alt-click on a light gray, some strokes like this. I think we are done. Great. Now I'm going to work on the remaining face. New path, pen tool, combine shapes. Go back to my drawing. Click and drag following the sketch. Eventually, I'm going to adapt the path to what I just did on the rendering. It won't be, absolutely precise, but it's a sketch, so I'm just trying to communicate an idea. Go down here, I follow these lines here, click and drag, rotate, click and drag. So this is basically the thickness of the dark gray part. And I went above everything. Now turn it on. Light is coming from the top. So the front of this area, I'm expecting it to be darker. So Alt click on something that looks kind of black. Make a huge airbrush. And can just do something like this for now. I think it works. Alt click, and I'm going to complete my grays here. I stop here because there is the cylinder. I can eventually add some little bit of airbrush here. Alt click and try to make it smooth. Okay, great. What else? Well, there was a well, first I forgot also this little part. There should be some thickness here. So I can make a path, turn it on. I think some black works. Are we done? Almost. I'm going to complete with this cylinder. Path, new path, combine shapes mode. I'm going to sketch this upper surface. There we go. No, kind of something like this. Oh. Turn it on. Alt click on this gray airbrush. Lighten it up the top, and the under part I'm just going to put some reflective light. I think it's okay. I don't need. It doesn't look great here, so I alt click, take another brush, the marker under the airbrush, and freehand I am just going to fix it. Now I'm going to work on the front. There are different ways to do it. If you want to do it precise, I'm going to sketch an elliptical tool in the combine shapes mode. Sketch it. Now Control T, and I'm going to rotate it and adapt it on top of the form. Like this. I think it's okay. Now I want to subtract something, so I take the tool, the pen tool, I go to subtract, and now I click and drag following my sketch. So it's freehand, it's not going to be absolutely perfect, but it should be okay. What if I want to fix it? Here is bumped. So under the pen tool, there is the white arrow here. Now I click with the white arrow and I can access the control points. Now that I'm done, I exit the path, go back to path number 6, turn it on, take the brush, airbrush, alt click on a color that I like, and staying very light, I'm just going to do that. If I want it darker, alt click on a darker color and go back. There was a cone inside that I'm going to fix. New path, combine shapes mode, freehand. I'm just going to make a new selection here. Okay, great. So brush, alt click on the light gray. I've done something like this because it's facing up and the light source is coming from the top. I think we are okay for just to, communicate the form. This is a vertical cylinder, so I might go back here, turn it on, and add a little bit of vertical value like that. Maybe it's too much, but something like that. I think it's okay. We have this little cylinder, so new path, pen tool, vertical cylinder. I'm going to, I'm in the combine shapes mode, follow this form, turn it on, some gray, light is coming from the top, so it's just vertical strokes. I just decided to clone some of the black with alt click and make it darker. I think we are okay. Now I have the remaining part is this. I can do a new path for that in the combine shapes mode. Great. Close it, turn it on, alt click on the gray. This is going to be darker, but basically I leave it like that. Eventually I can darken it up just a little bit, like this. I think there is something on the lines that needs to be erased with the eraser. That doesn't look great, so I just fix that. Okay, I think it's okay for what we have to do. It's this, and we always have this problem that the edge is so sharp. So how can we? Let's try real quick to do a couple of things. What if I want to put a section line here? So I'm going to use red to communicate it better. I want to communicate this separation. I need a section line. How do you sketch a section line? New layer. I call it section lines. New path. Pen tool in the combine shapes mode. Zoom in. I'm going to click exactly where I want that line to go. I'm sketching it. When I go down, it probably stops here. You see that the controls, the CVs are still active. So it's always a good idea to exit the path, go back to the path so they disappear. Now I take airbrush, black color, make the airbrush smaller, alt click so I check how big is it going to be. And now I go back to that path and click this button here. It's going to make a perfect line following that path. I can fix it freehand if I want. I mean, we can't just sketch everything freehand. We use the paths because they give access to some extra precision. Like if I want to communicate that's a cut line, now I need a white line, I could do it freehand, like here. So freehand absolutely works. So I do it freehand. Alt click. Okay, same problem with this edge here. It's too sharp. I can either take some black and freehand doing something like this, or I can use the paths. What if instead of black you use a gray? Does it still work? It should work with gray as well, but probably with black it looks. No, I think it works with gray as well. What if it's a lighter gray? Let's check it lighter gray. So remember, on the edges, it's always good to go with a little bit of airbrush. Maybe with opacity at 100 though. So freehand, I'm just going to do it. And make sure it's not solid white, otherwise it's not going to look great. With the path, it's probably going to be more accurate and faster. Freehand, it takes a little bit more time. Okay, there we go. Okay, I think it's okay. Eventually, I can make a path of the upper surface here. Just want to make it a little bit more visible. Control Z if you don't like it. Control Alt Z, you keep going back. There we go. So I'm just want to fix the upper surface here. Okay. Transform into a selection. Take the brush, a little bit of gray, and with the airbrush towards the end, I just do this. It just helps the form to be more readable. So I'm basically doing freehand on top of the selection. Great. I can always sketch, this form maybe in the front view with some quick go back to lines. This form looks something like this. There is something that rotates, and then it rotates like this, like this. That's the thickness. It keeps going, and then it rotates in this direction as well. Here it becomes a straight line like this. Now the question is, if I were a real designer, and I would be the time to say, do these radiuses work or not? Maybe this should be smaller in order to have a good dialogue with this. So in the sketch, we give an overall idea, but then to identify real stuff, orthographics are crucial. I need to have figured out exactly the diameter of these circles before attempting a successful 3D. Because it's fast to sketch on paper the right proportions, it's highly recommendable to do it on paper instead of jumping into your Rhino and attempting fillets that takes, it takes longer. So this could be, the idea for the, like if I want to match that fillet automatically, check how small this becomes. So if the engineer that's too small, you have to make it bigger, but then these also would become bigger to receive something bigger because they have to share the same center. Center is here. Same center for this. Then do it properly. But same center for this, same center for this. And then there is something here. We have seen there was a little whatever that there was put together like that. Usually radiuses in perspective views can be exaggerated using parallel lines. So this would be the kind of the front view of what I just did. Do we want to put a random logo as we have already? Well, in general, before I finish, I usually like to have an area where I really exaggerate the focal point, the contrast. So in this case, I select this area here. I turn it on. It's gray, but still I like the idea that it switches toward white a little bit. So I just do this. I think it gives it some extra flavor. Do we need a logo on top real quick? It's not required, but just to review how to do those things. Sony logo, print screen, random print screen, Control V on top, select my little Sony logo, select inverse, backspace, magic wand tool, click the white parts, backspace, Control T, and now I'm free to put it anywhere. Enter, image, adjustments, hue and saturation, lightness to the top, make it white. Control T, I'm gonna make it small. Clicking Shift so I keep the proportions correct. I rotate it, I fix, click Control so I can access to these extra adjustments. So remember, I can do Control T, but when I click a Control, I also can access all this stuff here. So Control T, rotate, put it here. click a control and I can do this. Click a control and I can stretch it in perspective. So I always, control is always pressed. Enter. I think it's too big. Control T. Maybe stretch vertically a little bit. Light is coming from the top, so even a white logo cannot be this white. So image adjustment, hue saturation, reduce the lightness a little bit, like this. Probably the perspective isn't great, but anyway, we can. Then is this the right place for the logo? I don't think so. It also looks too small, but who cares? We just, you know, for now, probably this is better now. Maybe in the center of that. Probably it's better like this. Yes, great. So for form studies, this could be an approach. You are more than welcome to